beyond the khaki. 5 striking revelations behind the Irwin origin myth. The Irwin family occupies a singular space in the global consciousness, standing as the seemingly rightful interpreters of the Australian wilderness. For decades, the khaki uniform has served as more than just workwear. It is a brand of authenticity, a secular vestment for a family that exports a specific brand of bushman grit and mystical animal connection. From the muddy banks of the north to the manicured enclosures of Australia Zoo, the narrative of the self-made conservationist has been sold to millions. However, every legend has an architecture, and every architecture has its silences. When we move beyond the polished television segments and dissect the official memoir, The Last Crocodile Hunter, the structural integrity of the Irwin origin myth begins to fracture. Through the lens of sovereign research and narrative analysis, we find a story built not just on hard work, but on the systematic erasure of inconvenient bloodlines and the performance of physical impossibilities. Here are 5 striking revelations that challenge the conservation gospel of the Irwin legacy. 1. Terra nullius in khaki. The headquarters of the Irwin Empire in Beerwah sits on unceded Kabi country. Yet, in the memoir, the land is presented as a blank canvas, a commodity waiting for white willpower to give it meaning. The text recounts the 1972 purchase of the 3.5-acre property as a simple transaction. We bought it, and that was that. This is the colonial trick performed in prose, treating a landscape managed and sung under Kabi law for millennia as an empty for sale sign. This narrative of discovery performs a modern version of terra nullius. By ignoring traditional owners, the memoir allows conservation to serve as a moral cover for occupation. This same soft power pattern is visible today in Sunshine Coast politics, where groups like the MRCCC and the Australian Ginger Growers are granted stakeholder status, while Kabi law is marginalised. As a member of the Sovereign Research team noted, the book never once names us, never once looks us in the eye, never once asks. That silence is the whole colonial machine humming along. 2. The physics of a miracle survival. The prologue of the memoir establishes its foundational conversion narrative. Bob Irwin, buried alive in a 14-foot clay shaft. The story claims he survived in 2 tiny air pockets, while his father-in-law drove to a trade school, found an apprentice, and returned to dig him out by hand. While cinematically gripping, the physics of soil, liquefaction, and chest compression suggest this is an origin myth rather than a workplace reality. Consider the data from recent case studies, such as a 9-foot trench collapse in Mapleton, Utah. Crushing weight. 1 cubic yard of wet clay weighs approximately 3,000 pounds. A 14-foot collapse would exert 13,000 to 15,000 pounds of pressure, the weight of 3 heavy SUVs on the human body. The respiratory dead end. Human lung capacity is a function of the diaphragm's ability to expand the chest. Under such weight, the diaphragm is paralyzed. Breathing stops in seconds, regardless of air pockets. The timeline trap. Professional multi-agency rescues using vacuum trucks for shallower burials take upwards of 90 minutes. The memoir's rescue timeline, involving a vehicle trip for help, far exceeds the survival window for a victim entombed in compacted clay. This story, featuring the axe handle as a cinematic prop and the mud as rebirth imagery, functions to justify Bob's abandonment of a trade. It is a symbolic settler rebirth designed to launch the move north. 3. The ghost on the Thailand-Burma Railway Perhaps the most profound silence in the memoirs, the anonymization of Bob's biological father. He is reduced to a single sentence about leaving the family when Bob was 4. However, military archives reveal a heroic and tragic figure. Private Joseph Ronald Irwin, service no, VX 20192 of the 2 Australian Pioneer Battalion. Private Irwin did not simply leave. He died of cardiac beriberi in November 1943 at 131 Kilo Camp, Little Nika, on the Thailand-Burma Death Railway. The memoir's decision to scrub his name, and service allows the stepfather less to be elevated as the pure origin of the Bushman line. By rendering the biological father invisible, the narrative avoids the messy trauma of the war and the vulnerability of a father who was a victim of history rather than a master of it. As the Sovereign Research Lens identifies, the biological father is rendered invisible so the stepfather less can stand as the pure origin of the Bushman line. 4. The records versus the racket. The memoir upgrades Bob's Melbourne years by claiming he was a Victorian state badminton champion. However, official archives from Badminton Victoria and contemporary sporting records contain no trace of this achievement. This discrepancy isn't just a lapse in memory, it's a compensatory narrative. Local oral history from Beerwah residents reveals that Bob's initial ambition was to open a Beerwah badminton centre. In the hyper-masculine culture of 1960s Queensland, where rugby league reigned, locals ridiculed the plan as a poofter sport. The memoir systematically scrubs this grit of failure, upgrading Bob to a state champion to overwrite the local mockery he faced upon arrival. 5. The normalization of the lasting sting. The memoir provides a stark glimpse into the macho demeanor of the era, recounting how Bob's mother would discipline the children with wooden coat hangers. When the wood broke, she switched to wire hangers because they didn't break, they just bent a little and left a lasting sting. Bob's reflection, "It never did us any harm," is a classic normalization of harshness. This macho hardness excludes vulnerability and links directly back to the dismissal of his biological father's suffering. It creates a facade where physical pain is framed as something that merely builds character. This exclusion of vulnerability is the same logic used to ignore the ancestral pain of the land's original owners. Conclusion: the record stays open. The Irwin story is a masterpiece of narrative control, but the power of ancestral guidance and oral history provides a necessary counterweight to these published myths. By pulling back the khaki curtain, we see a legend sustained by the erasure of the land's original owners and the smoothing over of a tragic biological bloodline. If the foundation of a conservation legend is built on the silence of the land's original owners and the erasure of its own bloodline, what does that tell us about the stories we choose to believe? The official book may be closed, but the sovereign record stays open. The country is still here, still speaking.
Old Man Mountain, you were here when the sea walked further in, and the red earth still was singing. I walk your spine, bare feet on your warm back, every stone a quiet story, every breeze my grandmother's breath. Mountain in Derry, I remember, you remember me. Every step I'm getting smaller, you're the one who sees. Hold my name inside your ridges, hold my people's bittersweet and steady. Children laugh, chasing shadows through the grass. I can hear the old ones laughing too, just beneath the magpie's cry. Mountain in Derry, I remember, you remember me. Every step I'm getting smaller, you're the one who sees. Hold my name inside your ridges, hold my people's dreams. Mountain in Derry, I touch the sky tree, tracing circles, not a line. Ask you softly, will they listen this time? You answer in kookaburra chorus, wind in ironbark leaves. Keep climbing,